What about the new surveillance techniques introduced to curb the spread?
In
Hangzhou, to go out of the community or to public activities, you need to have a green code. This green, yellow or red code is automatically decided through the system. It uses big data to decide whether you've been to affected districts or come into contact with those people.
I think that although it's not really reasonable, it is still a preventative measure.
We actually looked at the back-end code that the app was running, and what you could see is the moment that a user gives it permission to access data, it immediately sends a function that says report info and location to police. And then we looked into it, and the police were a key developer of the product as well. And so from that you can tell that the data is basically being sent back to the police the moment somebody actually uses the app.
In some 200 Chinese cities, you now need a green code to get on public transport. Without it, you can do almost nothing.
I'm not an expert, but if the government says this is useful, I believe them.
A Chinese company has now developed facial recognition technology that works even if you're wearing a mask. The epidemic has enabled the Chinese authorities to normalize digital social control, something they're unlikely to relinquish.
What's going on, guys? So in a couple of previous videos we've been tracking how China has used the COVID disease to kind of tighten the noose on their population, and we went over the health rating app where China has tapped Alibaba and TenCent, so just like think Amazon and Google or something like that. They've tapped the biggest .coms, the biggest corporate state behemoths that they have in their country. Essentially the two companies that have been hoarding the data, and they tap them to create these apps that color code customers or people, citizens, based off of where they've been, if there's anybody in their family that's been tested positive, if they've actually walked through a mall that had a positive test that came out of there, so you've been possibly exposed. Like, none of the Chinese citizens really know exactly what data the apps use to give them these codes, but they are completely restricted on their movement based off of them. And you know, your first thought is to think, oh, well, you know, that could never happen here, right? And the government in America is definitely not much better than the Communist Party as far as when it comes to spying on its own citizens. So the thought is, it can't happen here, not in America. But I think that is a possibility. Excuse the vertical feed here, but let's just type in coronavirus tracker and see what's already going on. I mean, people are already guaranteed, they're already downloading these apps. Inevitably, all these apps, all their data will be combined into one. Holy cow. That's a lot of apps already. Man. It's kind of like the Chinese will control your movement app light. But my assumption is when you download that app, regardless of what it's doing right now, its first code is probably akin to the first code in the Chinese app, which is send all data to police. It's incremental here in the US. They can't just come out right and do it. But why am I so worried about it? Well, I've been seeing it in the news. Check this out. Moscow to launch new surveillance app to track residents in coronavirus lockdown. City authorities in Moscow are rolling out new digital social monitoring tools. Social monitoring tools targeting the public after what officials say were constant violations violations of the city's quarantine imposed this week to fight the spread of the new coronavirus. Under restrictions in place since Monday, most of the city's 12 million residents must remain indoors, barring a few exceptions, like trips to the supermarket or pharmacy, taking out the trash, or briefly walking the dog. But starting Thursday, Muscovites will have their movements tracked through a mandatory app required on their smartphones. Don't have one? The city says it will lend out devices. The main goal is, together with the patient, encourage that he does not go outside, said Edward Lysenko, the head of the city's Department of Information and Technology, in an interview with Echo of Moscow Radio. In addition, Moscow residents will be obligated to register for a government-issued QR code. This is the same QR code that we saw in the red, green, yellow model used in Wuhan and now being used throughout China. A small square matrix barcode containing personal data. What information the codes will hold isn't yet clear, but Russians must present it on their smartphones or carry a printout of their QR profiles to present to police when requested. City officials say they're also preparing to educate the public, and elder Russians in particular, on what a QR code actually is. New tools will emerge with existing street cameras and face recognition software to quickly identify residents who stray from their homes and or quarantines, say authorities. Adding incentive to follow the rules, President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday signed a law introducing criminal penalties, including fines up to 7 years in prison for skipping quarantine and infecting others. The Russian leader also signed legislation granting the government additional powers to declare an immediate national state of emergency without the parliament's approval. Yet members of Russia's opposition, no stranger to the state of surveillance or prisons, are expressing particular unease about the growing digital arsenal the government says will help fight the COVID-19. A state task force on Wednesday reported more than 2,700 cases of infection and 24 deaths from the disease, with the majority of cases in Moscow. One thing is clear, wrote Leonid Volkov, a chief strategist of opposition leader Alexei Navalny, on his Telegram channel. The coronavirus will eventually leave, but this digital concentration camp will remain. And that's exactly what this is, a digital concentration camp. That is so aptly put. But I can hear you right now. You're talking about Moscow. I mean, look at that picture. Russia is the circus of all circuses. So you're talking about China and Russia here. Alright, yeah, I am. I'm talking about China and Russia. I told you at the beginning of all this that every single government entity will be using this to do the totalitarian two-step, as in they will get as close as they can get. When you see this being implemented in China and you see this being implemented in Russia, you can look for this to be coming to America. And the crazy thing about it is that people don't realize is all this data, they already have it on us. And what we're looking at is a combination of all this data, our credit score combined with our health records, combined with our voting record. All this data, once somebody is able to compile all that data, and once they've written algorithms that are good enough to do that, we are royally screwed. You're looking at China's social credit system combined with this movement system, this restriction of movement system. And so all you have to do is you only have to make one logical step to see that they'll use the red, green, yellow app that they're currently using for the virus for their social credit score system that they already have out to prevent people from getting on buses and train stations. It's the same technology. The QR codes seem to be at the center of it. I feel like QR codes are something that I really need to look into. But regardless, you're saying, hey, this is Moscow. Right now you're talking about China, and I mean the entirety of China now is using this, and Moscow. Alright, but check this out. UK government set to release app that tracks contacts of coronavirus patients. The United Kingdom is set to release an app that would track the movements and contacts of those infected with coronavirus, raising concerns that it could jeopardize citizens' privacy and be used as a means of social control. The NHSX, the technology arm of Britain's National Health Service, the NHS, is set to release a coronavirus tracking app that would monitor the GPS location data and Bluetooth activity of those who install it. So when you're monitoring the GPS location and the Bluetooth, you can see already what the app is going to be meant to do. It will track somebody who has the coronavirus, and using Bluetooth, it can warn people when the Bluetooths get within a certain range of each other. NHSX is looking at whether app-based solutions might be helpful in tracking and managing coronavirus, and we have assembled expertise from inside and outside the organization to do this as rapidly as possible. NHSX Chief Matthew Gould told the BBC, through the app, those who show signs of coronavirus will be able to order a home test for the virus, and if they test positive, a notification will be sent to everyone they came in contact with over the previous days. And I just have to cut in here and say there are some severe doubts around the efficacy of these tests. What I have read and what I have seen, there is a lot of unknowns. I can do a video about that subject at a later date because it's a whole other rabbit hole. But to get back to the point, there's severe doubts around the efficacy of these tests, especially the tests in the beginning. And that is admittedly now into the realms of what if. We don't even really know what they're testing for, because they're not testing necessarily for the virus, but they're testing for other things that indicate the virus is present. And that to me sounds very suspect. So you send off, so you're Joe Citizen, you're being a great guy, you think you have a fever, so you send off for this home test, you swab your mouth and it goes off to, I don't know, the Emerald City, and comes back from the government building on high that says you, Joe Citizen, do have coronavirus. And so now you must download this app, and it's going to tell all your contacts, and it's going to track your movements, and it's going to restrict your movements. And what percentage of the people who have coronavirus are asymptomatic? I mean, what percentage of the population is perfectly fine? They get a little bit sick. Are we going to have a flu app that we all have to register for now? I mean, are we going to just... This is what they're going to say. No, we won't. You don't need an HIV app and a COVID-19 app and a swine flu app and an H1N1 app. You don't need all of that. That's crazy. We can't do that. What we'll do is we'll just put it all together into one app. And that app will be able to tell you what it is you should and shouldn't do, and where it is you should and shouldn't go based off of your conditions and the conditions of everyone around you. That is, of course, kept very safe. Like Al Gore used to say, in a lockbox. Because we can trust government, right? Maybe they'll put it in a vault. 7. They're grimy. We cannot trust them at all. And here we are sending off our mouth swabs out, and we don't even understand the tests. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not saying this thing doesn't exist, but you really need to look into coronaviruses and how they test for them, and the efficacy of that, and whether or not you think that the science adds up. You do your own research on that. Because I don't want to tell you what to believe or not to believe, But you look into it and tell me what you think. Anyways, back to the article. The stated aim of the app is to reduce the need for a lockdown, easing the economic strain imposed on the country, says Oxford University team charged with developing the app. Okay, so what they're saying is, oh, this is going to be better than everybody just shutting down the economy. You'll be able to get out and freely move as long as you pass the app test. The constrictions that were currently under place many people under severe strain, said Professor Christoph Fraser. Therefore, if you have the ability with a bit more information and the use of an app to relax a lockdown, that could provide very substantial and direct benefits. Also, I think a substantial number of lives can be saved, he added. The app will not be made mandatory, at least not initially. But academics say that at least half the country would need to install it for it to be effective. It is set to be released to the public either shortly before or after the nationwide lockdown is lifted. You have to remember that these people live in England. And so it being mandatory, at least not initially, is something that freaks out us as Americans. But the truth is, they could mandate it here already. And they're not just working on this app. They're not just writing the code for this app. They have the groundwork for this app already laid out. And as a matter of fact, they're beta testing it in Singapore. Check this out.
As the COVID-19 outbreak in Singapore drags on, authorities have decided to use a mobile app to help with the arduous task of finding close contacts of infected persons, and they want you to play your part. So it's pretty simple to download this app. Find Trace Together from the App Store or Google Play Store, enter your number, key in the one-time password, and consent to your mobile number being stored in a secured registry. Then ensure Bluetooth and push notifications are switched on. iPhone users also need to keep the app running for it to work. Now, how the app works is that it first attaches a random ID to your mobile number. It then uses Bluetooth to detect other users who come within 2 to 5 meters of you and records their random IDs internally. Now, if for instance I have tested positive for COVID-19, MOH will contact me with a code for me to send my app logs over. They will then be able to decrypt the random IDs to determine the mobile numbers of my close contacts. Now, this really helps as I don't have to rely on my memory to figure out who I've met over the course of the past few weeks. This also makes the process faster and more accurate. Now, authorities have inserted multiple measures to protect users' privacy and personal data. For starters, usage of this app is voluntary and there are no plans to make it mandatory. Most importantly, the app only collects your mobile number and nothing else, not even your name and location data. Furthermore, MOH is the only authority that will be able to decrypt the random IDs and match them to specific mobile numbers. Now you might ask, what's in it for you? Well, authorities have said that the app will help protect yourself because authorities will be able to contact you quicker if you have been in close contact with an infected person. It also helps protect your loved ones and the community.
And you know, I scroll through those apps and show you those few that are in the App Store, but it's much more serious than that. It hasn't only moved from China to Moscow into England, where it was beta tested in Singapore, but it's here because there's already a company here that's working on it as well.
House could soon look toward an app from right here in Kansas City.
Only on 41 Action News, reporter Errol Rothfield explains how it could help track potential community spread. Triple Blind is developing an app that will help you know if you've come in contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. The app tracks a user's location every 5 minutes, keeping logs of where they've been in recent days should they test positive for the coronavirus. That information can be voluntarily shared with the health department or other users, all without revealing that individual's identity.
The important part about this is we do not want to expose anyone's private data. And so when you are comparing, all that it says is that you have had an exposure, something like 4 days ago, there was 45 minutes where you may have been exposed. That's it. You don't know where, you don't know who it was that you were near. All that it tells you is there's a potential that you cross paths.
The app is in phase 1 of just collecting data. It is free and can be downloaded now on both Apple and Android platforms. Reporting in Kansas City, Ariel Rothfield, 41 Action News.
And don't just think that it's Kansas City beta testing an app. There are most likely many different local news channels giving many of the same stories about all kinds of little tech startups in their local area that are just itching to combine all of big data into a system that will tell us when we can and cannot be around each other. Okay, so we're trying not to make a big deal about these apps. And we see the one that they're using in Wuhan, and they've basically given everybody a red QR code and prevented all movement. You can't get on a subway, you can't get on a bus, you can't even walk out in public. If the cops see that your QR code is red, you're gonna get beat with sticks and stuff. So we've all seen the videos. Okay, so we assume that that is maximum capacity, like full on lockdown, totalitarian, look at what China can do to its people, that's horrible. But not here in America. Okay. But then we see Moscow gets locked down. And when we read about Moscow, Moscow uses the exact same system. Russia, Putin, didn't even alter the system. Still using the QR codes, still using the color codes, and still fines and up to 7 years in prison for violating this. And it still restricts movements. Okay, but that's Russia. We don't want to freak out yet about Russia, because Russia's pretty, they can put their people, they can do whatever they want to their people, right? And then we have England. And what do we see in England? Well, we see a hybrid system, which is what we would have predicted logically. And it is supposedly maintaining anonymous data about who you interact with. And so that way, if you then later test positive, it can automatically go back to all that data and tell all the people you interacted with that they've been exposed. And it can do all that while maintaining absolute privacy of all the citizens. Forgive me if I fail to believe that. And then in the last paragraph, what do they say? The app isn't mandatory for now. What are the implications behind a government being able to force its population to download an app and use it to restrict their own movement inside of the country? Because it seems like there's a lot less implications for this everywhere else in the world than there are here in America. And they haven't even introduced the app here yet. But I'm just looking around at what's going on around me. And if the UK is going to push it, they say at least half people have to sign up for it. Half the people are not going to sign up for it. So if they do make it mandatory, and they're already beta testing it in Singapore. If you listen to what that guy said in that news report from Singapore, that's the exact same app. So they're already testing it in Singapore, They're getting ready to bring it to the UK. If half the people in the UK don't sign up for it, it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on. Because it's not mandatory yet, might change. Because keep in mind, the way that these apps are designed, you don't want to download the app if you're sick. Everybody has to download the app, right? So in very much the same way like medicines treat the sick individual, and vaccines treat the entirety of everyone to help individuals, this app is very much like an electronic vaccine, and there'll be the same kind of social shaming that accompanies people who reject vaccines. That same shaming will be applied to anybody who doesn't want to download this app, because you download the app and it's for the safety of all the people around you. It's the safety and the security of all of your country. It's the patriotic thing. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Comment below, like, share, subscribe. I got another video coming out either tonight or tomorrow about the earthquakes that are going on in the US, but not so much the ones that are going on in the US. There are about a couple of other earthquakes that happened during some interesting timing I took note of a while back. So yeah, that's what I've got. Make sure you hit the like button and try to share my content, guys. I'm trying to get my content out there, so help me out. And I'm going to leave you with a video that was made by Colonel Custer, United States Army. All right, catch you next time, guys.
The tour of the commissary for now. I want to do an update to you guys in front of this giant bunny because I've never done that before. So let's start off with the numbers. Right now we got 3 folks in quarantine. There are some positive cases up in the tri-border area. We're tracking about 8 up in the Geilenkirchen region. They're being taken care of by medical professionals. They've been put away from the rest of us so that we won't cross-contaminate one another. I sent out a link today about fresh air and sunshine. Please get out in the fresh air and the sunshine when we get that stuff. It has a curative effect.